Good afternoon, class. For this assignment, I'm going to focus on Mercy Otis Warren. My interest in her stems from the first time I heard her name. It was when I was reading this book. Don't know much about history, and the book mentions that she was one of the first, if not the first, official historians of the United States. So I was fascinated that a woman was the first historian of America, and that her work came out so close to the birth of America itself. I do not have any issues with female historians, but I was aware of how male dominated American society was in the time of that Mercy Otis Warren lived. She lived during the American Revolution itself. So I was curious about the circumstances of her life and the challenges she had to become a historian within her own lifetime. This assignment compels us to repurpose the questions from Leah Melio's brief analysis, How Betsy Ross Became Famous. So I'm going to take the questions from that reading and repurpose them for our assignment. So, if the story of Betsy Ross didn't exist, do you think a woman of some other profession would have filled the shoes of a female revolutionary representative? Absolutely. I think Abigail Adams would have stepped into that role, but I think many of these women who could have were more hesitant to do so. So, Mercy Otis Warren was born September 25th, 1728, in Barnstable, Massachusetts. Now, I grew up in White Plains, New York, and I teach at White Plains High School, and so as a northern-born kid, I learned about all the northern contributions to the American Revolution in grade school. You know, the battle where the British landed at Kips Bay and chased Washington and his army north, the Battle of White Plains, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the Siege of Boston up a 3-hour drive from where I live. I'd never heard of Barnstable. Well, it's actually not near the city of Boston, but out on the Cape where the Cape Cod curves like that, and it makes sense because Mercy Otis Warren's mother's family, one of the descendants, was on the Mayflower, so it makes sense she lived in the area. Mercy Otis Warren's father was a prominent attorney, and this was helpful to her because for 3 reasons. One, she rose to prominence as a historian because her father was a critic of the then governor Thomas Hutchison. That's not unusual because a lot of people were in the neighborhood, in the area, but he shared his views openly with his family. So she grew up in a family and a household of revolutionary fervor. Second was James Otis's decision to have his daughter Mercy educated by the same tutor as he hired for his 2 sons. Other women of New England were outspoken critics of British rule and supporters of their husbands, such as Abigail Adams. But Mercy Otis Warren had an education. She had the drive presented by her father, and she had the third one, the connections. The fact that the early drafts of her book, The History of Rise, Progress, and Termination of the American Revolution, was presented by her directly to George Washington and gave it his blessing. Mercy Otis Warren was also the wife of James Otis, who served directly under Washington during the Revolution. During the American Revolution, she corresponded with several of the leaders of the Revolution, including the Virginians, George Washington, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, as well as some of the Bostonians like John Hancock, Sam Adams, and his cousin John Adams, as well as John Adams' wife Abigail. Number 2, how important was it to have a famous female from the American Revolution? I feel a female voice was important for 2 reasons. First was when the aging John Adams was shown the now famous Trumbull painting of the signing of the Declaration of Independence for the first time, he reportedly dismissed it. When pressed by his son John Quincy Adams why, John Adams claimed that the founders were never in one room together because they were all working in different rooms on multiple committees running in and out of rooms. While that's true, it also speaks to the disconnected relationship between the founding fathers at that time. And it also tells us why Mercy Otis Warren was important. As the wife of a founding father, she was in contact with many of these men during the Revolution, as well as a homemaker. So she had the time to compile these correspondences, and she had the personal connection to make those connections and get different points of view and create a gestalt picture of the American Revolution, not an individual voice. As I mentioned, she was in contact with colonial leaders like George Washington, Patrick Henry, Jefferson, John Hancock, Sam Adams, John Adams. So while all of those men penned historic documents we study in this course and in previous courses, they wrote in isolation. Where she was actually in correspondence with them, she was writing in a gestalt compendium of everybody's different points of view, giving a broader, fuller picture of the causes of the revolution for her book, History, Rise, Progress, and Termination of the American Revolution. Secondly, we know that the wives of many of the founding fathers were important voices to their husbands. In a famous letter, Abigail Adams said to her husband John, "Remember the ladies," as he was off to Philadelphia to craft the laws of the new nation. I feel that it's important to have a female voice recording American history, not just for perspective, but also to represent what Abigail called it, the fairer sexes. 3. Does the actual person, Elizabeth Claypool, still hold importance as a famous icon, Betsy Ross? Well, for Otis, yes and no. This Betsy Ross image that grade school kids learn is a mythologized creation of America, and there's nothing wrong with that at the grade school level. We use songs to teach grade school children through series like Schoolhouse Rock. It helps children at the grade school level learn. But at the high school level where I teach in AP US History, we actually do teach about Mercy Otis Warren as a writer of historical work, as someone who wrote her own plays and they were put on. This demonstrates that there were voices other than the men that are on the back of the Trumbull painting on the back of the $2 bill that were part of the fabric of America, the growth of America, the Union of America. Finally, number 4. Why haven't such writings like this challenged the validity of a legend affecting public praise of Betsy Ross? I think Mercy Otis Warren established herself in a way that Alexander Hamilton did, through George Washington, the man of unquestionable morals. That alone was enough to cement her legacy as a legit historian. Thank you very much.